For centuries, what could not be explained by man was often labeled as magical and mystical, and creatures of the earth are no different. From the earliest sailors claiming sea lions as mermaids of the deep to today's legends and hunt for the elusive Bigfoot, there's a new breed of science today called Cryptozoology, which explores mythical and odd creatures from folklore, urban legends, and more in an effort to prove an animal's possible true existence in the world and debunk the myths and legends surrounding these strange creatures. While the science of cryptozoology is not widely recognized nor a respected field of scientific study, it's hard to ignore the eye-opening discoveries these pioneer scientists and researchers are making. They're essentially rewriting our history, debunking superstition, myths, and lore from the stories of our ancestors. Let's explore some of the most recent and startling discoveries brought to light by this controversial science with Top 5's finest creatures people thought were fake but aren't. Let's begin. Number 5. The Devil Bird. Our first creature you probably thought was fake comes from the untamed jungles of Sri Lanka. The devil bird, also known as ulama to the locals, hails from mystic lore in Sri Lanka and is said to emit blood-curdling, human-like shrieks in the dead of night from within the jungles. The shriek that echoes through the jungle is intensely terrifying to the locals living in the villages nearby that they dare not enter the jungle when the devil bird is crying. According to local folklore, the cry of the devil bird is the shrill of a monster whose infant son was brutally murdered by her jealous husband in a fit of rage one terrifying night. It is said that the mother desperately ran into the forest, covered in her own son's blood, and screamed in such desperation and horror that her cry woke the spirits of the jungle. The spirits of the jungle then transformed the mother into the devil owl, who screams horrifying shrills in the dead of night, mourning the loss of her beloved son for eternity. Natives believe that the cry of the devil bird is an omen that death and despair is near. While its exact identity is still up for debate, scientists have speculated that the native spot-bellied eagle owl matches that of the devil bird to a T, including its unmistakable human-in-distress-like shriek, according to discoveries made in 2001, and is becoming widely accepted in the scientific community as the creature that has haunted the Sri Lanka jungles and villagers for centuries. There's been a systematic investigation to the identification of the devil bird spearheaded by Dr. R.L. Spittle in his book The Far Off Things. A specimen of the spot-bellied eagle owl was found by local villagers in 2001 and received much publicity as the final resolution of the devil bird's identity. But natives are skeptical of this scientific discovery as they've heard the true cry of the devil bird and have claimed to have seen it in action, also claiming that most legends regarding the bird are of one single man's claim who fled the jungle in anguish, clutching his head with one hand, claiming that the bird had a crest as opposed to two ear tufts atop his head. And since the spot-bellied eagle owl has very prominent ear tufts, the locals are not convinced. Though it may simply be more difficult to convince a local villager that the stories they grew up learning and passing down to each generation are rooted in fiction with a simple scientific explanation as to the cause of the frightening calls they've heard night after night, keeping them in fear of entering the jungles when the devil bird is crying in pain and mourning, fearing that death will be imminent to anyone who enters the jungle. Number 4. The African Unicorn. The okapi, also known as the African unicorn, had for centuries been able to elude man, giving it its mythical status. It was said that the African unicorn possessed great magical powers, and anyone who had been chosen by the unicorn would be able to see it, and he too would then possess these great powers. Effectively hiding from man in the vast Congo jungle, it wasn't until 1861 that evidence of its true existence came to light by a man named Philip Goss in his book The Romance of Natural History. In his book, Goss mentioned evidence of the okapi, and some speculated that he had found evidence of the unicorn. But it wasn't until 1901 that the okapi was truly understood and given its name by zoologist Philip Sclater, who presented a painting of the okapi to the Zoological Society of London that showcased its features with clarity. Originally, it was thought that the okapi was a member of the horse family, but it was later declared that the okapi represented an unknown genus of Giraffidae, the only other creature related to the giraffe. The okapi is a bizarre-looking creature that resembles a product of a bad Photoshop job, with hind legs that resemble that of a zebra, the torso of a donkey with a head and neck of a giraffe. It's no wonder that people doubted its true existence and identity for so long. The okapi sports a single bump in the center of his head, giving it its mythical unicorn status. The creature was a master at hiding itself away from man and predators, and it's no wonder the myths and legends surrounding the unicorn had been told and handed down from generation to generation for centuries. Number 3. The Kraken. We have all heard the tales of the legendary and infamous Kraken, a sea monster of enormous size that was said to dwell in the depths of the ocean. For centuries, seamen, explorers, Vikings, and pirates all told the tales of this giant sea monster, and until recently with the discovery of the giant squid, was just accepted as tall tales from these weary and often drunken travelers. According to legends, the Kraken was the size of a small island and had the ability to capsize even the largest ships at sea. Well, it's no coincidence then that the giant squid can reach lengths up to 43 feet long and weighing in at over a ton, accurately coinciding with the legendary size described in the Kraken lore. In recent history, the only evidence scientists had to the existence of the giant squid was from carcasses that had washed ashore in different areas of the world. Often these carcasses were so far decayed that researchers found them to be of little use for study. Then, in 2004, Japanese researchers finally were able to take the first pictures of a living, breathing, fully grown giant squid in its natural habitat. It took nearly 2 years for the researchers to capture these images. Then, 8 years later, in July of 2012, a live adult giant squid was filmed for the very first time in its natural habitat, in the waters off Chichijima. The filming of this massive creature was no easy feat, involving 55 dives, 2 submersible vehicles, and more than 285 hours, reaching depths of up to 3,000 feet below sea level. The film was hailed as an enormous breakthrough by scientists the world over. People have been searching for the giant squid for hundreds of years, literally, said Richard Ellis, researcher and author of The Search for the Giant Squid, The Biology and Mythology of the World's Most Elusive Sea Creature. For a long time, people didn't even think they existed, and now we're going to learn how this thing moves, how it swims, and what it does with those massive arms. This is truly one of the greatest discoveries of our time. Number 2. The Duckbilled Platypus. The duck-billed platypus is definitely a strange creature that for many years people thought was nothing more than a hoax by a taxidermist with a sense of humor. This egg-laying mammal is native to eastern Australia, including Tasmania, and is one of only 2 mammals that lays eggs instead of giving birth. The platypus was first discovered by the Europeans in 1798. Explorers sketched a drawing of this odd creature and brought back its pelt to Europe as proof of its existence. British scientists' initial hunch was that this was an elaborate hoax crafted by the crew. George Shaw, who produced the first description in Naturalist's Miscellany in 1799, stated it was impossible not to entertain doubts as to its genuine nature. Others believed a taxidermist combined the parts of different animals, including a duck's beak, an otter's body, and a beaver's tail, to create the platypus in an effort to gain notoriety. It wasn't until 1801 that the platypus's existence was confirmed as a real-life creature. While the platypus is an odd-looking mashup of many animals, it is the most unique mammal on the planet, other than being one of only 2 mammals to lay eggs. The male platypus is venomous, with sharp stingers on the heels of their rear feet, which can deliver a toxic blow to any enemy or predator it comes across. The platypus is an expert swimmer that feeds on insects, larvae, shellfish, and worms, along with bits of gravel and mud scooped up by its bill. Platypuses do not have teeth, so the bits of gravel and rock they scoop up help chew their food into smaller chunks before swallowing. Number 1. Mutant Pig Monkey. Number 1 on our list of creatures people thought were fake but aren't is by far the most bizarre but totally real creature, the Mutant Pig Monkey. And of course, the story of just how he came to be is just as bizarre as the creature itself. On December 3rd, 2016, a mother pig located on a rural farm in the Guizhou province in southwest China gave birth to a litter of 15 piglets. To the owner's surprise, one little piglet looked terrifyingly different than its siblings in that he had the face of a monkey. According to the owner, a monkey from the nearby forest made his way into the farmer's pig pen and mated with the female pig months earlier. The farmer ran the monkey off, not realizing, of course, that the monkey's seed had already been planted. To everybody's surprise, the pig gave birth to probably the weirdest creature on Earth. The piglet was born with a huge underbite that made it impossible to nurse, and so his mother rejected him. The farmer was going to kill the piglet, but his children pleaded for its life. The children named the little fella Oinky and took on the responsibility of nursing this strange baby pig with a bottle several times a day with the hopes that he will survive. The story and pictures took the internet by storm, and most brushed it off as a hoax, claiming the pictures have to have been photoshopped. But this oddity is as real as you and me. After just a few short weeks of nursing and caring for Oinky, the little pig monkey died from natural causes. The farmer has since constructed a much more secure pen for his pigs in hopes of preventing another mischievous monkey from jumping over the wall for a quickie. And there, you have the 5 creatures people thought were fake but aren't. While the telling of such myths and stories out of ignorance is simply a natural human way of internalizing and explaining that which we cannot explain, science is making strides to pull back the curtain and reveal the truth behind the most fantastical myths and legends handed down from our most ancient of ancestors. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you drop a like and share it, and if you haven't already, subscribe down below to get notified almost every single day with new videos from Top 5's finest. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, we are